My name is Iris Blackstone, and I'm 30 years old now, reflecting on a time not so long ago when the earth shifted beneath my feet, both literally and figuratively. It was at my grandfather's funeral, of all places, that a lifetime of being underestimated by my own family came to a rather spectacular head. They still pictured me as poor Iris, the one just scraping by, bless her heart, as a small-time realtor. Little did they know. Have you ever been so consistently misjudged by the people who are supposed to know you best that you almost start to believe their version of you? Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I always find it fascinating to see how far these stories travel. And if you've ever felt like you had to work twice as hard just to be seen, or if you've ever experienced that sharp sting of family blindness, go ahead and hit that like button. Maybe subscribe too, because you'll find a lot of kindred spirits here, folks who understand what it means to finally, definitively, prove them wrong. My childhood wasn't one of overt cruelty, not in the way you might imagine with villains twirling their mustaches. It was more insidious than that, a slow, steady drip of dismissiveness that eroded my sense of self before I even knew what a sense of self was. My parents, bless their cotton socks, were practical. Or so they said. My father, Arthur, was an accountant, a man who saw the world in spreadsheets and bottom lines. My mother, Clara, well, she mostly saw what Arthur told her to see, and echoed his sentiments with a gentle, almost apologetic smile. Then there was my older brother, Leo. Leo was the golden boy, the one destined for greatness from the moment he could kick a football. He was charismatic, athletic, and effortlessly academic. Everything came easily to Leo, or so it seemed, and my parents, they basked in his reflected glory. His achievements were family achievements, trumpeted from the rooftops. Mine? Well, mine were nice, quietly acknowledged, if at all. I remember in 3rd grade I won the school spelling bee. I was so proud, clutching that little blue ribbon. I ran home, bursting to tell them. Dad was on the phone, something about quarterly reports. Mom was helping Leo with a science project, a volcano that, I later learned, he'd mostly copied from a library book. "That's nice, dear," Mom had said, barely glancing up from the papier-mâché. "Don't get it dirty." The ribbon ended up in a drawer, under a pile of old socks. Leo's volcano, however, got pride of place on the mantelpiece for a month, even after it started to smell faintly of vinegar. It wasn't just achievements, it was opinions, preferences, even space. Leo got the bigger bedroom, naturally. Leo got the first pick of television shows. Leo's friends were always welcome, mine were often an inconvenience. Leo needs his space to study, Iris. Leo's team is coming over, dear, perhaps you could play in your room? My room, the smaller one, overlooking the noisy street. My grandfather, Dad's father, Alistair Blackstone, was different. He was a retired builder, a man with calloused hands, and a quiet wisdom. He owned a decent plot of land on the edge of town, with a rambling old house he'd built himself. It wasn't fancy, but it was solid, like him. He'd spend hours there, tinkering in his workshop, tending his overgrown garden. When I was little, he was my refuge. He'd let me help him, giving me small, important-sounding jobs like sorting screws or watering the tomatoes. He didn't talk much, but he listened. He'd look at my schoolwork, really look, and nod slowly. Good, Iris, that's good thinking. Coming from him, it felt like a knighthood. As I got older, the subtle dismissals from my parents became more pronounced, especially when it came to career paths. Leo, naturally, was steered towards law, a respectable, high-earning profession. He took to it like a duck to water, or at least, he projected that image. For me, they had simpler expectations. Maybe something in administration, Iris, or teaching. Something steady. The underlying message was clear. Don't aim too high, dear. You're not Leo. I wanted to go into architecture initially. I loved buildings, design, the way spaces could be transformed. I even put together a portfolio for my application to a prestigious university. Dad glanced at it. Architecture? That's a very competitive field, Iris. A lot of math, you know, and long hours. Are you sure you're cut out for it? His doubt was a heavy blanket, smothering the spark of my ambition. Leo, meanwhile, got a new car for getting into his chosen law school. I didn't even get a good luck. I ended up doing a business degree at a local college. It was fine, practical. but my heart wasn't in it. During my second year, Grandfather Alistair had a mild stroke. He recovered mostly, but he was frailer. I started spending more weekends at his place, helping him out, listening to his stories about the old days, about building things that lasted. He never pressured me, never questioned my choices, but in his quiet company, I felt a flicker of that old spark again. He'd look at the way I organized his workshop or helped him sketch out a plan for a new garden shed and say, "You've got a good eye for how things fit together, Iris." A practical mind, but a creative one too. It was Grandfather Alistair who, in his own way, pushed me towards real estate. Not selling houses, not initially. He'd talk about the land, the value of it, how communities were built. He'd point out undeveloped parcels around town. "Someone's going to do something with that land one day, Iris. Make sure it's someone who cares about more than just profit." It planted a seed. The major catalyst, the event that truly set me on my current path, was my grandfather's declining health and the subsequent family discussions about his property. This was about 5 years before his passing. He was still alive, still very much present, but Leo, ever the pragmatist, started talking about estate planning. That's what he called it. I called it circling vultures. We were all at my parents' house for Sunday dinner. Grandfather Alistair was there, looking a bit tired but still sharp. Leo, in his expensive suit, looking every bit the successful lawyer, cleared his throat. "Dad, Mom, Grandfather, I've been doing some thinking about the future. Specifically, Grandfather's property." My fork clattered onto my plate. Grandfather looked at Leo, his expression unreadable. "The land values in that area have been steadily increasing," Leo continued, pulling out a folder from his briefcase. "I've had a preliminary chat with a developer, a company called Oakridge Holdings. They're very interested in acquiring the entire block, including Grandfather's parcel. They're offering a substantial sum." My father leaned forward, interest gleaming in his eyes. "Substantial, you say?" "Very," Leo affirmed. "Enough for Grandfather to live very comfortably and, well, for the rest of us to benefit significantly down the line." He gave a smooth, lawyerly smile. I felt a cold fury rise in me. Grandfather was right there. This wasn't some abstract asset, it was his home, the place he'd poured his life into. "Leo," I began, my voice tighter than I intended. "Grandfather hasn't said anything about wanting to sell." Leo waved a dismissive hand. "Iris, be realistic. It's a big property for one person to manage, especially now. This is a practical solution. Oakridge is offering top dollar. It would be foolish not to consider it." "Foolish?" I repeated, looking at my grandfather, whose face was now a stoic mask. "It's his home." "And it will remain his home for as long as he wishes, of course," Leo said smoothly. "But this is about securing the best financial outcome. Sentimentality doesn't pay the bills, Iris." My mother chimed in, her voice soft and placating. "Iris, dear, Leo's just thinking of what's best for everyone. Your grandfather's getting on. It's a lot for him." I looked at my grandfather. He finally spoke, his voice quiet but firm. "The land's not for sale, Leo. Not while I'm drawing breath." Leo sighed, a theatrical display of exasperation. "Grandfather, with all due respect, that's not a sound financial decision. Oakridge won't wait forever." "Then they'll have to build around me," Grandfather said, a faint smile playing on his lips. The conversation ended there, awkwardly. But the seed of resentment in me had sprouted into a thorny vine. They saw him, and by extension his legacy, as a commodity. And me? I was just sentimental Iris, too emotional to understand the real world of finance and development that Leo moved in so confidently. My initial shock and hurt were profound. I felt a deep aching despair, not just for my grandfather but for the callousness of my family. That night I cried myself to sleep, feeling utterly alone and misunderstood. They had no idea of the fire Leo's words had lit under me. They thought I was just a struggling realtor, someone who arranged viewings for pokey flats and dreamed of one day selling a semi-detached. The next day, still reeling, I confronted Leo at his office. He was dismissive, as expected. "Iris, I understand you're close to Grandfather, but this is business. Oakridge Holdings is a major player. They're redeveloping that whole district. It's progress. You wouldn't understand the complexities." "Complexities?" I scoffed. "Or just greed?" He leaned back in his expensive leather chair, a picture of condescension. It's about maximizing asset value, something you learn in the real world, Iris. Not playing shop in some little estate agency. That was it. That was the moment. Playing shop. The utter contempt in his voice. I didn't shout, I didn't argue. A strange calm settled over me. You're right, Leo, I said quietly. I probably don't understand your world. I walked out of his opulent office, not with despair, but with a cold, hard resolve solidifying in my gut. I vowed then and there that I wouldn't just survive, I would thrive. I would learn about development, about land, about building something lasting, something with integrity, the very things my grandfather valued. I wouldn't just understand Leo's world, I would enter it and I would do it my way. He thought I was playing shop? Fine, I'd build the whole damn mall. The years that followed were a blur of relentless work. I quit my job at the small estate agency, much to my parents' vocal disapproval. But Iris, it was a steady job. What are you thinking? My mother had wailed. My father just shook his head, muttering about flighty decisions. I cashed in the few savings I had, took out a modest loan using my tiny apartment as collateral, a move my father called financial suicide, and enrolled in every course I could find on property development, urban planning, and construction management. I devoured books, attended seminars, networked relentlessly. I lived on instant noodles and cheap coffee. Sleep became a luxury. There were days I wanted to give up. Days when the financial strain was crushing, when an unexpected bill would send me into a panic. I remember one particularly bleak winter, my heating broke, and I couldn't afford to fix it for 3 weeks. I wore 3 jumpers indoors and typed up business proposals with numb fingers, tears of frustration pricking my eyes. The weight of my family's dismissal, their absolute certainty of my failure, was a constant, heavy presence. Leo, on his visits to our parents, would occasionally ask with a smirk, "So, Iris, still playing with your little building blocks?" His words were like salt in an open wound. But then glimmers of light appeared. My first ally was Mrs. Albright, one of my tutors, a retired architect with a razor-sharp mind and a kind heart. She saw something in my desperate hunger to learn, in the meticulousness of my coursework. "You have a good head on your shoulders, Iris," she told me one afternoon, after I'd presented a particularly ambitious redevelopment proposal for a derelict industrial site. "And more importantly, you have grit. Don't let anyone tell you what you can't do." Her belief was a lifeline. She became a mentor, guiding me, critiquing my ideas, and opening doors I didn't even know existed. Then came Ben. I met Ben at a local council planning meeting. He was a young, ambitious architect, frustrated with the soulless corporate firm he worked for. We bonded over a shared vision of creating sustainable, community-focused developments. He was smart, funny, and he didn't once look down on me for my unconventional path. He saw my drive, my passion. We started collaborating on small projects, a couple of house renovations, a feasibility study for a small commercial strip. He was the creative genius. I was the one who could see the bigger picture, manage the finances, and navigate the bureaucratic maze. We made a good team. Slowly, painstakingly, we built something. Our first proper company, Stonebridge Developments, a nod to my grandfather, Alistair Blackstone, and to Ben's surname, Bridges, started small. Our office was my cramped living room. Our first significant project was converting an old, neglected warehouse into loft apartments. It was a nightmare of unforeseen problems, planning permission delays, and cowboy contractors. There were times I thought we'd go bankrupt. Leo, hearing about it through the family grapevine, apparently remarked to my father, "Told you she was out of her depth, she'll come crawling back to selling terraced houses soon enough." But we didn't fail. We poured every ounce of our energy, creativity, and what little capital we had into it. The lofts, when completed, were stunning. They sold quickly, and for a good profit. We reinvested everything. We took on bigger projects, more complex ones. We hired staff. Ben was my rock, my partner in every sense. He never doubted me, even when I doubted myself. He'd look at me across a table littered with blueprints and spreadsheets, exhaustion etched on my face, and say, "We've got this, Iris, you've got this." My family, meanwhile, remained blissfully, willfully ignorant of my progress. To them, I was still poor Iris, probably struggling. When I bought a slightly larger apartment, my mother said, "Oh, that's nice, dear. Is the rent very high?" When I mentioned closing a deal, my father would ask, "Commission good, was it?" They couldn't seem to grasp that I wasn't just selling property, I was creating it. Leo, now a partner at his firm, would occasionally offer condescending advice. "You know, Iris, if you ever need some real legal counsel on those little deals of yours, I could give you a family rate." The irony was so thick you could spread it on toast. The contrast was stark. Leo lived in a swanky penthouse, drove a sports car, and holidayed in exotic locations, all meticulously documented on social media. My parents lapped it up, their pride an almost tangible thing. Me? I was still driving my 10-year-old hatchback, reinvesting every penny into Stonebridge. My successes were quiet, unglamorous, built on sweat and sacrifice, not on flashy displays. They didn't see the late nights, the stress, the sheer determination. They only saw what they wanted to see. Leo, the soaring eagle. Iris, the plodding sparrow. One day, about 2 years before grandfather's passing, I was visiting him. He was weaker, but his mind was still clear. He'd been following my progress, quietly, through the snippets I shared and, I suspected, through his own discreet inquiries. He knew about Stonebridge developments, though I'd never boasted about its growing success. He looked at me, a rare, proud smile on his face. "You're building things, Iris," he said, his voice raspy. "Good things, things that last, like I used to." He patted my hand. "Don't you ever let them tell you you're anything less than capable?" His validation was worth more than all the gold in Fort Knox. There was one small, almost imperceptible shift. My younger cousin, Sarah, Leo's sister-in-law, started to ask me more questions about my work. She was an intern at a small marketing firm and seemed genuinely interested, not in a pitying way but with a kind of quiet admiration. She'd seen some of Stonebridge's completed projects featured in local design magazines. "That community center you built in the old Northwood district, Iris? It's amazing. My friend's mum runs a class there. It was a small thing, but it was something. A crack in the wall of family indifference." The foreshadowing of the climactic event began subtly. Oakridge Holdings, the developer Leo had championed years ago, had indeed been buying up land around grandfather's property. Their sleek, impersonal branding was appearing on construction hoardings all over the district. They were known for aggressive tactics and luxury developments that often priced out local communities. My grandfather, true to his word, had refused every offer, every increasingly desperate plea from Leo, who saw a fortune slipping through their fingers. Grandfather's small plot, with his rambling house and wild garden, was becoming an island in a sea of impending redevelopment. Then, about 6 months before he died, grandfather called me. His voice was weak. "Iris," he said, "I need to talk to you, about the land." My heart sank. I thought he was finally going to give in. But he surprised me. "I've been watching you, girl, Stonebridge. You're doing good work, honest work." He paused, took a breath. "I've made some changes to my will. The land. I want it to go to someone who understands its true value, not just its price tag, someone who'll do right by it." He didn't explicitly say he was leaving it to me, but the implication hung in the air. He made me promise to keep our conversation confidential for the time being. The weight of that promise, and the burgeoning hope it represented, was immense. This wasn't just about property, it was about legacy, about validation from the one person whose opinion truly mattered. Meanwhile, Stonebridge Developments had grown beyond my wildest dreams. We weren't just a local player anymore. We had projects across 3 counties. We'd won awards for sustainable design and community engagement. We had a beautiful, modern office in the city center, a talented team, and a reputation for quality and integrity. I was, by any objective measure, very successful, financially secure, professionally respected. But to my immediate family, I was still just Iris, the one who dabbled in real estate. Their perception was frozen in time, shaped by their initial dismissiveness and Leo's self-serving narrative. The news of grandfather Alistair's death came on a Tuesday morning. It wasn't unexpected, he'd been fading for months, but the finality of it hit me hard. The funeral was scheduled for the following Saturday. The gathering would be at my parents' house afterwards. I knew, with a sinking certainty, that the topic of grandfather's property would be front and center. Leo wouldn't waste any time. Oakridge Holdings would be licking their lips. The funeral itself was a somber affair. Grandfather had been well liked in the community, and many old friends and neighbors came to pay their respects. My parents were appropriately mournful, though I detected an undercurrent of anticipation from my father. Leo was the picture of grieving grandson, but his eyes held a calculating gleam I knew all too well. After the service, we all gathered at my parents' home. The air was thick with unspoken tensions and the smell of my mother's casseroles. Extended family milled about, offering condolences. I mostly kept to myself, exchanging quiet words with Sarah, who gave my hand a sympathetic squeeze. It didn't take long. After the last of the non-family mourners had departed and we were gathered in the living room nursing cups of tea and slices of Madeira cake, Leo cleared his throat. Here we go, I thought, bracing myself. Well, he began, his tone carefully modulated between sorrow and practicality. This is a sad day, a great loss. Grandfather was a unique man. He paused for effect. But as he would have wanted, we must look to the future, specifically, the matter of his estate. My father nodded gravely. Yes, Leo. The property. It's considerable. Indeed, Leo said. And as you know, Oakridge Holdings has been very keen for a long time. Their most recent offer, just before, well, it was very generous. I've already spoken to their representative this morning, expressing our condolences, of course, but also indicating that we will likely be in a position to proceed relatively quickly. My mother dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Oh, it's all so sudden, but I suppose it's for the best. Alistair wouldn't want it to become a burden. Exactly, Mother, Leo said, with an air of decisive authority. We need to be pragmatic. Selling to Oakridge is the most logical, most financially sound option. It will secure everyone's future. He looked around the room, expecting nods of agreement. He got them from my parents. My Aunt Mildred, Dad's sister, a woman whose financial acumen extended to finding the best supermarket bargains, also nodded vigorously. I stayed silent, watching them. The sheer arrogance, the assumption that they would just carve up his legacy like a Sunday roast. Leo then turned to me, a patronizing smile on his face. Iris, I know this might be difficult for you, given your attachment to the old place, but this is the big league, millions are at stake. Oakridge will develop that entire area into luxury apartments and retail spaces. It's a huge undertaking. My father chimed in, Yes, Iris, it's a complicated deal. Best left to Leo, he knows about these things. In fact, Leo continued, warming to his theme, Oakridge is looking for local estate agents to handle the initial sales of the units once they're built. Small stuff, of course, starter apartments mostly. I was thinking, Iris, with your experience, you could perhaps put yourself forward. Might be a good little earner for you. I could put in a word. The condescension was breathtaking. He was offering me crumbs from the table he was about to steal. The culmination of years of being underestimated, dismissed, and patronized, all wrapped up in one smug, self-serving offer. This was it, the moment. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my tea. The room was quiet, expectant. They were waiting for me to nod, to agree, to be grateful little Iris. I placed my teacup carefully on the saucer. It made a small, distinct click in the silence. Actually, Leo, I said, my voice calm, level, but carrying a new weight they hadn't heard before. There might be a slight complication with your Oakridge deal. Leo raised an eyebrow. Complication? What sort of complication, Iris? I've handled all the preliminary legal work. It's straightforward. Well, I said, meeting his gaze directly, the main complication is that Oakridge Holdings won't be buying grandfather's land, or any of the land around it for that matter. A flicker of annoyance crossed Leo's face. Don't be naive, Iris. Of course they will. They're the biggest player in this part of the county. Who else could possibly afford it or have the resources to develop it on that scale? My father looked worried. Iris, don't cause trouble. Leo knows what he's doing. I smiled, a small, tight smile. Oh, I think there is one other company. A company that has been quietly acquiring options on all the surrounding plots for the past 18 months. A company that has a rather different vision for the area than luxury flats and chain stores. A company that believes in sustainable development, community spaces, and preserving the character of the neighborhood. Leo was starting to look uneasy. What are you talking about? What company? I leaned forward slightly. A company called Stonebridge Developments. Silence. Utter, stunned silence. You could have heard a pin drop. My father's jaw literally sagged. My mother stared, her teacup halfway to her lips. Aunt Mildred looked utterly bewildered. Leo's face, however, was a study in slowly dawning horror. The cogs were turning, painfully. Stonebridge. Developments? He repeated, his voice barely a whisper. But that's your little outfit, isn't it? The one you potter around with? Potter around with? I allowed myself a wider smile now. Well, Leo, our little outfit, as you call it, has grown a bit since you last paid any attention. We've become quite successful, actually. We specialize in large-scale urban regeneration projects. And yes, Stonebridge Developments has secured the rights to develop the entire district. Grandfather Alistair was well aware of our plans. In fact, he was very supportive. The shock in the room was palpable. It was as if I'd announced I was secretly the Queen of England. Leo's face had gone from smug to incredulous, and was now rapidly turning a rather unflattering shade of puce. You? But how? The capital involved, it's enormous. Indeed it is, I said pleasantly. We have excellent financial backers who believe in our vision, and, as it happens, Grandfather made some adjustments to his will. His parcel of land, the keystone to the entire project, is now part of Stonebridge's portfolio. He entrusted it to us, to me, to ensure his legacy was honored in a way he would have approved of, not sold off to the highest bidder for a quick profit. My father finally found his voice, stammering, Iris, you own Stonebridge Developments? The company that's buying up everything? Co-own, Dad, I corrected gently. With my business partner, Ben Bridges. But yes, I am the CEO, and yes, we are the developers who have been, as Leo so delicately put it, very keen on this area. Leo looked like he'd been poleaxed. His carefully constructed world, his image of himself as the financial titan of the family, had just crumbled around his ears. He stared at me, speechless, his mouth opening and closing like a beached fish. My mother just kept blinking, as if trying to reconcile the Iris she thought she knew with the woman sitting calmly before her, discussing multi-million-pound development projects. Aunt Mildred was now looking at me with a new, almost fearful respect. The immediate aftermath was a delicious kind of chaos. Leo, once he regained some semblance of speech, tried to bluster. This is outrageous, preposterous. You can't have. Grandfather would never. Oh, but he did, Leo, I said, my voice still calm. His solicitor will confirm everything. The will is quite clear. He wanted his land to be part of something meaningful, something that contributed to the community, not just another block of soulless luxury flats. He believed in what Stonebridge is doing. My father, ever the accountant, was doing rapid calculations in his head. The potential loss of the Oakridge windfall, replaced by, what? His daughter, the one he'd dismissed, holding all the cards. He looked utterly bewildered. But you never said, all these years, you let us think. You never asked, Dad, I replied, not unkindly. You had your assumptions about me, about my capabilities. You were so focused on Leo's version of success that you never really saw mine. The change in their demeanor was almost immediate. The dismissiveness vanished, replaced by a mixture of shock, awe, and a healthy dose of fear. Suddenly, I wasn't poor Iris anymore. I was Iris Blackstone, CEO of Stonebridge Developments, a major player, the one who held the key to the future of Grandfather's legacy and, indeed, a significant portion of the town. Support came from an unexpected quarter. Sarah, my cousin, who had been listening in wide-eyed silence, suddenly spoke up. Wow, Iris, that's incredible. I've seen your company's work, it's fantastic. Grandfather would be so proud. Her genuine admiration was a balm to my soul. Leo, meanwhile, was deflating like a punctured Michelin man. His arrogance had evaporated, leaving behind a bewildered, almost pathetic figure. He'd built his entire self-worth on being the successful one, the deal-maker, the one in control, and in one afternoon, in his own parents' living room, that illusion had been shattered. He'd been outmaneuvered, not by some corporate rival, but by his little sister, the one he'd patronized and dismissed for years. The irony was exquisite. The days and weeks following the funeral were a whirlwind. The legalities of Grandfather's will were confirmed, much to Leo's chagrin. Stonebridge Developments officially took possession of his land. The news of our comprehensive development plan for the district, which included affordable housing, green spaces, a community hub, and support for local businesses, alongside carefully designed residential units, was met with widespread approval from the local council and community groups. It was the antithesis of Oakridge's proposal. My relationship with my parents underwent a seismic shift. They were cautious around me now, respectful even. My father started asking hesitant questions about my business, his tone laced with a new deference. "So, Iris, this zoning application, is that complex?" It was almost comical. My mother started fussing over me in a way she never had before, offering me the best cuts of meat at dinner, insisting I take the comfortable armchair. It was a strange, unsettling dynamic. The approval I had craved for so long was finally there, but it felt hollow, tainted by the knowledge that it was born not of genuine understanding, but of my newfound status and wealth. Leo became a ghost of his former self. He avoided me, and when we were in the same room, he was sullen and quiet. The few times he did speak to me, his voice was stripped of its usual condescension. He even, on one occasion, mumbled something that sounded suspiciously like an apology about his past behavior, though he couldn't quite bring himself to make eye contact. His standing within the family, and I suspected within his own firm once the news of his misjudgment got out, took a significant hit. The golden boy had lost his shine. My true allies, Ben and Mrs. Albright, were thrilled for me, not just for the business success, but for the personal vindication. "I always knew you had it in you, Iris," Mrs. Albright said, her eyes twinkling. Ben just grinned, gave me a high five, and said, "Well, Blackstone, looks like you finally got to build your mall." Over the next few years, Stonebridge Developments transformed that part of town. Grandfather Alistair's old house, meticulously restored, became the heart of the new community, housing a local history museum and a cafe. The gardens he loved were expanded and open to the public. We built quality homes, vibrant shops, and green parks where children could play. It wasn't just a development, it was a neighborhood, a community. I made sure of it. Every decision was guided by the values he had instilled in me: integrity, quality, and a respect for the land and the people who lived on it. My life now is different. It's busy, challenging, but incredibly fulfilling. I live in a beautiful home that I designed myself, not ostentatious, but filled with light and art. I'm financially secure beyond anything my family could have imagined for me. But more importantly, I live life on my own terms, free from the crushing weight of their low expectations. I am respected in my field, not because of my name or connections, but because of what I've built, what I've achieved through sheer hard work and determination. The relationship with my parents has settled into a kind of cautious truce. They are proud of me now in their way. They boast about their daughter, the successful developer. But there's always a part of me that remembers how it used to be, the years of dismissal. Forgiveness is a complex thing, isn't it? I'm not sure I'm entirely there yet. We see each other, we're civil, but the old, easy dynamic, or rather, the old, easy imbalance, is gone forever. I dictate the terms of our interactions now. Leo is still around. He's quieter, more subdued. He eventually left his high-flying law firm and started a smaller, local practice. Some say he learned humility, others say he simply couldn't handle the fallout from being so spectacularly wrong. We have a distant, polite relationship. There's no more condescension, no more smirks. Just a kind of wary acknowledgement. I think, in his own way, he regrets his past behavior, but the damage was done. The chasm between us remains. Sarah, my cousin, has become a good friend. She works for Stonebridge now, in our marketing department, and she's brilliant. She's a reminder that not all family is defined by blood, but by genuine connection and support. Looking back on it all, the journey was incredibly hard. There were so many times I wanted to give up, to shrink back into the small, insignificant box my family had created for me. But Grandfather Alistair's quiet belief, Mrs. Albright's mentorship, Ben's unwavering partnership, they were the scaffolding that held me up when I felt like I was crumbling. The biggest lesson I learned is that your worth is not determined by how others see you, especially if their vision is clouded by their own biases or limitations. It's determined by what you know to be true about yourself, by your actions, by your integrity, and by your willingness to fight for your dreams, even when no one else believes in them. Being underestimated can be a superpower if you let it. It allows you to work in the shadows, to build your strength, to prepare for the moment when you can finally show the world, and more importantly, yourself, who you truly are. So, what about you? Have you ever had to prove your worth against the odds? Share your stories in the comments below. I'd love to read them. And please, don't forget to like this video if my story resonated with you, and subscribe for more stories of resilience and vindication. Remember, never let anyone else define your limits. Your value is inherent. Go out there and build your own damn mall, whatever that may be for you.